Strategy. I'm Saurabh Agarwal. I lead the EY private practice. Last 7 years, I have been focusing around Make in India programs with respect to various government subsidies. When we look at today, the global disruptions in supply chain, it's not something which started now. I think COVID was the first time when the disruptions started, and we started using the word China+1. I think after seeing the global trade tensions which are happening across the globe, the way on X every day, some or the other statement is made. You plan your supply chain, and the next day, when you open up your office, you find that the entire supply chain which you have planned gets disrupted due to the tariffs which are being imposed. So I think China+1, I think is becoming a reality. But it's very important for us as India eyeing to also ensure that when we talk about China+1, there are other Southeast Asian countries as well who are also eyeing their pie share of the cake as well. Now, how can India get the larger pie of the cake and move from Atmanirbhar Bharat to Bharat Par Nirbhar? Of course, every day, yesterday when those additional 25% tariffs got imposed on India, the first thing which many people started saying is that there will be impact. Yes, there may be a short-term impact on our economy. But when we look at maybe a mid-run to long run, I think not doing a trade deal now, but doing a proper negotiation with US is the right step by the government. Today, when we say, see, Indian government is negotiating a lot of bilateral agreements with multiple countries. It started with India, Australia, followed by we look at India, UAE, and then when we look at India, UK. India, Switzerland is in the talks. India, Europe is in the talks. So I think there are alternate markets which India is exploring, and not just the west part of the world, but also the other developing economies. It's also important to understand that the PLI schemes have contributed successfully to the growth. While of course some schemes have been extremely successful, some schemes still are coming up. If you do Google, you will find that there are 14 schemes, but actually there are 17 schemes on which Indian government has put in 3.07 lakh crores to the industry to put up manufacturing. But when we look at the way the investments are coming, so far the disbursal is only close to 24,000 to 25,000 crore. So while it has led to production getting, you can say, accelerated in some of the sectors like mobile phone, telecom, etc., but still there's a lot of way to go. From a logistics standpoint, India still continues to be costly destination, but the logistics costs have gone down significantly. But when we compare to ASEAN, I think still a lot of action has to be done. But from a government perspective, when we look at Gati Shakti, we look at dedicated freight corridors, multimodal parks, Bharatmala, Sagarmala, I think all these programs are helping quite a lot. But these are all mid-run to long-run programs. So therefore, when I was asked to come and moderate this session, I really accepted. I was like really eager to come and moderate this one because of the fact that this is a topic which is something very close to my heart. And when we look at the panel today, which we have, we are joined by Shesh ji from, so we have Shesh ji, we have Rashmi ji, we have Vikas ji, Sanjeev ji, and Ajay Singh ji. They are coming from various parts of the sectors. Someone from Hindustan Platinum, someone from Finance, someone from Moglix, someone from Ujala, Cygnus, and someone from Logistics. So when we look at, we have a varied panel today with us who can provide more details around it. But, end of the day, what we expect from this panel is to discuss the alternative supply chains, how it can come across, but at the same time, what the policy level changes which we can expect from the government in this particular regard, and ASSOCHAM can recommend over a period of time so that our supply chains doesn't get disrupted and our economy remains resilient. With this, I think I'll start this particular session. Maybe Ajay ji, I'll first come to you. You are coming from Hindustan Platinum, you're a chief supply chain officer over there. Exports to the US is likely to face some headwinds. Retaliatory tariffs, trade friction, every day, something or the other is happening. While the government is trying their best to close a deal, but there's $86.51 billion of exports which were there to US from India in financial year 24. How do you foresee that India can mitigate the impact of such tariffs and retain their export share. At the same time, there can be a potential loss. If there's a potential loss, how do you foresee that some of the other nations with whom we are partnering, we can get that part of the share of the loss addressed from those nations?
Thanks. Thanks. So my take on this is very simple. I think the way the policies are being made, I think in the current crisis, if you see when we came out of COVID, a lot of changes happened. We already started talking about nearshoring, offshoring, the things. And with this, the tariff changes, what is coming into effect. I think one strategy which always be there that if you see around the world, I think no world is self-sufficient, no country is self-sufficient. For every or small alternative of raw materials or any other material, you need to be dependent on the other part of the world. Same way, when you come to the on the policy matter, what you asked the question, policies are always be there. Yes, short terms we will be facing a lot of challenges because a large chunk of our exports into the US market. But in the same time, I think with the policy changes, we need to always have to see that what are the alternative markets what we have. I think in the previous panels also it was spoken about, Dr. Stia was talking about the FTAs. I think that it is very prominent now that how we can effectively utilize the FTAs which is already being signed and which is on the way. And the different demographics like countries like Australia, I think we have not tapped the Australian market yet. Biggest market what we have seen in our own commodity market, we have seen a large amount of changes. We used to import or export lots to US. In last couple of years, we have changed our whole strategy and it is moving from US to now Australia and South Africa and other regions. So I think there are a lot of things are there where we tap the market into South African markets. We have Latin American markets and then European markets. I think the last year itself, the EFTA is being signed with Switzerland. So I think that has come into effect now. And it is a very much, I think we can take a challenge of whether we can tap the market of Switzerland and Norway and those countries. And I think with the UK FTA being signed now, I think this is one of the very primitive way to see it, how we can leverage the UK market in more primitive where our products can be more concentration. I think with this effect, I think it will be a very beneficial for us, which can lead to the new market segments. And I think the short terms losses always be there to gain into the long term. That's what my take on this.
Thank you, Ajay ji. Shesh ji, coming to you, the point which comes across is, if I heard Ajay ji correctly, there are alternate sales markets or markets which are being explored by India. So from a logistics standpoint, given there are so much shifts which are happening because of the tariff changes, how do you see India's logistics sector coping with such changes and realigning themselves for our China+1 strategy?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Well, I think my take is very simple on this. This too shall pass. We as a world have seen many battles. This too shall pass. I don't think so this is going to last for too long. It is right now a reality which is staring at us. America needs India. There's no two opinions on that. I think let's get that right. We need America. And at some stage, I think the larger wisdom will dawn and this will get sorted out. A little political right now, but I think it's just a question of now. Will it be 2 months from now, 3 months from now? I don't know. But I do think this will for surely pass. Now, what are the alternative markets? And I think India and Indians and Indian government have been very actively engaging in every part of the world. You look at Africa, we are so very active now in Africa. You look at Middle East, we are very much involved in Middle East. You look at Far East, we are part of the ASEAN, many ASEAN countries, India has signed the trade deals. So I do think these were always possibilities and opportunities. As a good business practice, I think this is the wake-up call that there is a very old English saying, which said, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So I think we have got very possessed with this American outlook. It's very important. It's a big market for us. We need them. But I think it's right now a wake-up call for everybody to start looking at it. Now, just to comment on something which Saurabh, you said, China+1. I think this is the media coin term. I somehow always felt China+1 is not necessarily India. It could be Vietnam, it could be Cambodia, it could be many other countries, because all of them are gearing up in a very, very big way to catch up. So if I have some stats which I just want to put it on the table, engineering, China produces $4.66 trillion. India produces $110 billion. Okay, if you look at steel, they produce 1.02 billion tons, and we produce 144 million tons. Okay, now if you look at a couple of other things, pharma, China is 307 billion, we are 50 billion. What I'm saying is if China were to even lose 10, 15, 20, 30%, it will make not a big difference to them. It is for us, even if we gain 10%, it's a significant one, and that's where we should focus on, and I think we'll come back and talk about what should be our role and how we should approach it. So particularly at this stage, I'm not really I'm just waiting and watching. I think it's important. They say in crisis, you know the strength of the man. So this is the test for our Indian business. How we hold up is important.
Thank you, Shesh. So, I completely agree with Shesh when he says that it's not China+1, it's all about how India can make larger impact and gain a larger market share. I don't think so that we are competing against China over here. But at the same time, the point which he said that how do we manage the crisis? I think it's something which is very, if I have to look back, Indians are one of the, you can say, those people who manage the crisis in the best manner. We have seen that in COVID and likely during this particular tariff war, I hope, and I keep my fingers crossed around the same, that we'll manage it better. Sanjeev ji, coming to you, if I look at the PLI, FTA, potential opportunities outside the West markets, but generally all these things have happened. This has been benefiting the large conglomerates. But when it comes to MSMEs, it's very vital from our employment perspective. At the same time, when we look at the global linkages, how can we integrate the modern supply chain for MSMEs? And in order to really, given the export boost which is expected from PLI, FTA, what tech and policy enablers are needed to help Indian MSMEs become competitive and globally integrated, especially in supply chains which are currently dominated by Vietnam and Mexico?
Thank you. I think it's a very good question. I think the technology, the platforms, the AI, the tech-driven approach, the digital-first approach, and the mantra that the government has adopted, I think that plays a very pivotal role, and we've been witnessing this wonderful transition of India as an alternate to China in the last few years. And we have been a B2B company providing supply chain solutions and helping the companies to do procurement of industrial products for last 1 decade. And that's why we, as I said, we've been witnessing this wonderful change. Now, from a tech perspective, I think we need to look at how this tech can revolutionize the entire ecosystem or the chain to address the inefficiencies, the pain points in the entire system. When we go and meet the CEOs, CXOs, CPOs of the companies, there are issues on both demand and supply side. Let's talk about the demand supply issues. For example, the common concern that we see is that the vendor bases are fragmented, right? There are procurement inefficiencies. They are not able to optimize the inventories. There is lack of transparency in the entire supply chain system, right? The product discovery time is very high. So these are some of the concerns that you see, and that's where you see, the contribution of platforms like us, the technology to play a big role, right? We are kind of a platform which has been there for almost a decade now in India, serving almost 700 plus large companies. We've been dealing with almost 500,000 plus SMEs in India, in helping them with the market access, with the platform to sell their products, to help their financing needs, etc. So those platforms, tech innovations, help companies to cut down the production cycles, the procurement cycles. We've been talking to various companies. We have seen the results coming. Almost 30 to 40% of the product discovery times have gone down. We have seen the procurement cost being, optimized by almost about 10%. We are talking about the literacy rate. The digital literacy has been going up significantly. That is helping the SMEs to become more digital savvy on the compliances part. There are more, there are initiatives on e-invoicing coming on e-platforms for financing activities, for compliance network related issues. So I think tech has been, driving this initiative of making these SMEs and the entire manufacturing ecosystems quite strong and healthy to be able to take India to the next level.
Thank you, Sanjeev. So, we have talked about the way the other markets are being explored by the Indians. But, if we look at the foundation for any such activity, it is finance. So, Vikasji, coming to you, when I look at supply chain, the infrastructure, logistics, warehousing, cold storage, all of these things require significant capital. It's a capital intensive industry where, of course, the returns come over a period of time. So far, this particular sector is not into priority sector lending. What are your views that if this particular sector is included, one, should it be included in priority sector lending? And if it is included, what will be the impact on India's supply chain and how it will help us in becoming maybe, you can say, we can compete with the neighboring countries?
Thank you. First of all, before I answer your question, I just observed a very simple thing that from the topic of China+1, we started talking about America -1, America without India. And it's needless to say what is happening on past few weeks is mind-boggling. Nobody has anticipated the kind of shift US would have towards India. But also go back, why China+1 happened in first place was again the same vision or view or the policies of America towards China, where they did not want to procure from China, they wanted to put restrictions around it, and all the manufacturers based out of China started looking for alternate markets, alternate manufacturing hubs or supply chains. So like few of my colleagues on the dais mentioned that nothing is permanent. That was not permanent, today is also not permanent, situations will change. But what it tells us that we as Indian businessmen, professionals, entrepreneurs cannot rely on single market, single business, single opportunity, and most importantly, we have to stop looking for something which is very easy. This is a tendency we tend to have built over the years that whatever is easy, okay, US market is easy, let's supply there. My friend Mr. Ajay mentioned about how Australia is a big market. Very important. Now, why? Because US has far more better, larger market, better logistics, better supply chain, better procurement. So it is easier to supply there. But why not have spread over different markets? That is the biggest question I had in my mind. But anyways, coming back to a question of PLI and PSL. So you're right, the logistics as a specific industry is not classified as PSL. That's a big gap. But in some way or the other form, when you're providing those services to agriculture or small and medium enterprise, you can classify as a PSL. But having said that, the warehousing, again, some bit or the other, there's lesser clarity. The clarity and the complete focus on driving, building integrated supply chain should be the motive of the government. And I think the fact states itself. I think you only mentioned that how logistics cost in India is the highest. It's close to 13-14%, whereas the average cost across the globe, including all the inefficiencies, is still less than 8%. And government of India is still driving a target of less than 10%. We are still far, far away. So for any manufacturer, any part of supply chain to be more efficient, the costing has to be lower. The cost of supply, the cost of doing business, the cost of financing, everything has to be cheaper. So there, I think there's a lot of focus which is required to be built by the government in one, taking initiatives, giving it a PSL status, a dedicated PSL status with a lot of focus by financing institution, and financing that could be one of the ways. But yes, that is something which is missing and a lot of impetus is required to be put.
So thanks, Vikas. Rashmi, coming to you, when we look at, you're coming from the healthcare sector and the way when we met outside, you were talking about the way you are doing work into the tier 2 and tier 3 cities of the country. When I look at the availability of diagnostic machines today, still if I look at the localization rate, maybe Wipro, Siemens, etc., would have achieved a localization of somewhere between 30-35%. Still the high-tech technology which are used by some of the other European companies, the localization rates are very poor. While of course we have come up with a PLI for medical devices, PLI for APIs, and we are entering into free trade agreements with UK, UAE, etc., even Korea, Japan, which were in existence in the past. You know, how can procurement strategies in the healthcare sector evolve in response to the Indian government's policy interventions in the form of PLI, FTAs, etc., and especially to manage these risks on account of these supply chain disruptions which are happening on account of tariffs being imposed and the cost going significantly high over a period of time?
So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Saurabh. This is a very interesting question, and in fact, you have asked the entire healthcare supply chain related challenges in one question. So I appreciate that. And I would like to kind of segregate the problem into parts and talk about healthcare, and it is little different from other industries. Healthcare, we deal with lives. So as a supply chain professional, when I am talking about anything, any goods, services, machine, drugs, consumable to be procured, there is always at the back end of the mind that it is not material. It is something that is going to touch lives of people. A single decision can go haywire and it can impact the outcomes of clinical procedures going on. Said that, India has come a far way if I compare in last even 15 years when I am into healthcare working with different organizations. When we started, our dependency for drugs, consumables, machinery was broadly on brands which were imported. All the purchases of equipments were happening from GE, Siemens, or any other companies which were making equipments not only in China but other parts. However, now if I talk about, and I was gathering some numbers along to share, in terms of drugs and consumables, India constitutes 20% of the world's largest in terms of the generics. So generic is one component where India has come a long way. And we can actually cover the entire globe in terms of providing generic until doctors are acceptable to those generic molecules. In terms of vaccine supplies, 60% of vaccines and APIs sit in India, and there is a lot of good works that are happening in manufacturing plants when it comes to drugs and consumables. If I go by WHO pre-qualified list, India holds around 57% of APIs, but again for generic. Now the problem here is, if I talk about India and if I talk about different healthcare brands, many hospitals which are good brands, or I will say will operate in category or a category A and B cities, are not yet very open to generic molecules. You must have come across quite a guidelines which are coming from government stating that when a doctor is prescribing a medicine, it should be talked about generic and not brands in specific. As soon as we become specific to brands, our dependencies on other countries increases. It can be China, it can be US or any other country. However, now considering the overall pressure of cost that is coming on the hospitals in terms of delivering the end product or end care to the patients, doctors are now opening up to generic, ensuring that the quality is maintained. So here comes the role of supply chain people. It is about partnering with the clinicians in a manner that we ensure a balance between the quality and the cost. And working in so many brands like Max, CK Birla, and now with Ujala, Cygnus, the one approach that is successful in helping us as a country is that we are partnering with manufacturers as well, going to the level where drugs are being manufactured, doing the necessary testings and certifications, and then saying, look, hey, this product is good and drugs and consumables can be used. However, in terms of equipment, there is a long way to go. In terms of manufacturing equipments in India, there is a lot of work that needs to be done. We are not yet ready. When I say we are not yet ready, there is a lot of trade policies that we know are being made. The purpose is today also broadly 70% of purchase in terms of brands and in terms of the clinical preferences sits with the equipment brands which are manufacturing outside India, be it China. China obviously is the biggest because they offer very less cost. It goes to US as well, but doctors are comfortable with the brand tagged to the equipment. If I talk about one of the most expensive equipment today, which is we all know about robotic surgeries. For so many years, it was only one brand which was actually leading the globe, which was Da Vinci, which is a US brand. Only 2 years ago, when they have opened up their patents, it has now been started manufacturing in India, and the cost difference is almost 4 times. Yeah, that's the cost difference. So if we, and now because there is a pressure on the cost overall, so now we are open to getting to the manufacturers who are producing in India, but ensuring that there is a balance between quality and cost. When we try to do that, there is a challenge in terms of compliances. Because when I talk about compliances, the value that is supposedly given to any such certifications right now sits with US FDI. You know, that is what everyone talks about. It is not easy for Indian manufacturer to go to US FDI and get approvals. That's the challenge, and that's what we need to, you know, solve. I will go by what Vikas said. It has to be an integrated approach. So if I talk about our government norms, our government policies, right now we are coming up with a lot of norms and policies around that the cost to patient should be reduced under Ayushman or other panels. However, we are not thinking that what is the pressure on the cost of serving the patient. We have to bring along those guidelines more strongly where generics are being pushed and it is being tracked. So that is one area which will help us as a country. However, there is a lot of good work that is happening. The numbers are saying so. Clinicians are getting open to collaborate with Indian manufacturers, but there are challenges and we are moving towards achieving them.
Rashmi, you know, I have a question, another question for you. Of course,
Yeah.
the pharma tariffs are yet to be announced, but he has started talking about 250%, 100% of the tariffs. And, you know, we are one of the largest exporters in pharma as far as US is concerned as a market. And more so, generally, whenever.
It's generic,
not
the
generic.
entire pharma.
Yeah, I'm talking about generic. Generally, you know, what has always been said is that part of the profits which come from the exports are absorbed in the domestic prices, and that way I think the medicines are cheaper for the Indian consumers. With all this happening, how do you foresee from a supply chain disruption happening as far as the customer is concerned, more on the generic drugs?
So see, the first problem is the acceptance of generic as a organization or as a hospital. Quite a few brands and quite a few doctors are not yet very open to using generics, right? However, partnering with doctors and helping them gain that confidence that, you know, this product is equally good, what, you know, a brand XYZ is offering, is an exercise that has to be done in a very collaborative way. Right now, it is being done in bits and pieces. Maybe a government level initiative where we form some kind of organization where doctors or opinion maker comes in and they identify that these are the products that are most used, and we are, you know, kind of making it a mandatory guideline that stick with a generic being manufactured by XYZ brand in India. It will help us to solve that problem, and disruption will also be taken care of. Because when it comes to generic also in India, there are multiple manufacturers. The second point that I want to call out, which is helping to, you know, kind of solve the cost factor in the hospitals, is it is not between Indian manufacturing or it is not between anything being imported from outside. But today in hospitals, quite a few doctors and organizations are focusing on buying directly from manufacturers. So the brand, which is the layer in between, doctors and organizations are trying to remove that and go directly to manufacturers, right? So that is also helping to strike a balance that if I say that, okay, I need to use a brand Cipla only, but Cipla also gets manufactured by a manufacturer in India. So now hospitals are reaching directly to the manufacturers, consolidating their buying, and then picking up the stock of the same batch. So that ensures the quality is maintained.
Yeah, maybe in the interest of time, I'll come to my last question. That is for everyone, and maybe 30 seconds for each one of you. Given the overall supply chain disruptions which we can foresee, and China+1, or maybe you can call as the future of Indian manufacturing, what are the 1 or 2 policy level changes which you would want to recommend, which maybe ASSOCHAM can take it to the government? And maybe we can start with Shesh ji from you, and then we can just follow to understand that what are the policy level recommendations which you will want to make.
I think, Saurabh, I've always felt that the success of any country's industry largely hinges on SMEs. If you go across to China, you'll see the big companies, but the number of SMEs you see there thriving is very, very large.
Correct.
And we need to see that happen here. Yeah. Now, what is the challenge? Why SMEs are not able to do it, or they can only go to a certain extent, is purely the capital. The availability of the capital, the cost of raising capital in India is prohibitively high, and government needs to pitch in and facilitate that, number one. Number two, they need to have a policy which allows SMEs to thrive and which protects them. It has to be a little protection policy, because till a certain level, they need hand-holding. If that is not happening, it's going to constantly keep coming to bite us. Now, we can go on. There are many things.
Maybe I'll go to Vikas, because you raised the point on cost of capital for MSMEs. I think
just one point I want to make. We keep talking about cost of logistics, and which is very high in India. I must tell you, cost is directly related to the volume and the quantity which you make it. Our volumes are not big, hence the costs are high. You get your volume right, and that's where the role of SME comes in.
Thanks, Shesh. Vikas.
So very, very pertinent question. 6.3 small and medium enterprises in India, and yet only 20% having access to formal credit. That speaks the huge gap. The problem is not just the cost of capital, the excess of capital also.
Because I want you to
cost
the
of
recommendation.
Capital,
sorry.
I think it is important that there has to be, suggestion perspective, there has to be an integrated platform where the MSMEs can come, get access to the capital in a way that it kind of gives clarity to everybody, even as financier like me, that what is the orders they have in hand. There are platforms like Trades where you can give it an invoice discounting. But again, the problem is acceptance by the large corporates. On paper, they are on the platform, but they're not allowing their invoices to get discounted.
So, yeah.
Another point here. The problem is invoice discounting is post-shipment, but they need money to manufacture, to procure. Hardly any financing arrangements for MSME which gives them pre-shipment, where they can actually get financing against PO. We at Shriram, we have launched that product last year, but again, that's not a very, very prevalent product in the market. So make that kind of capital also accessible. Third is the equity. SME IPOs are coming, but we know there is a gray element around it. I think there is a capital need to be accessed, because debt is not the only sort of financing which can help them. Equity for the small and medium enterprises is also required.
Sanjeev, I'll go to you, because it was a platform part, so that's why I want some recommendations from you on this.
No, absolutely. This fintech-based lending, of course, we talked about post-shipment lending, but there are platforms like ours who have been giving credits and financing facilities even on the PO-based, kind of transactions. So I think these platforms like us has been playing a super important role in terms of facilitating the capital to the SMEs. I mean, as I said earlier, we've been dealing with 500,000 plus SMEs, and one of the challenge definitely is to have quick access to the capital. But more importantly, also there are certifications which are very important when you look at market outside. There are digital
Sanjeev, I'll ask a recommendation which you want the ASSOCHAM to make to the government. Sorry, if you
no,
can
absolutely. I think the platforms are going to play an important role, as I said. Fintech lending has to extend more and more. MSMEs have to be brought on platforms for e-invoicing, e-logistic, e-compliances, which sometimes becomes a bottleneck for getting the financing facilities for them.
Yeah, Rashmi, coming to you, the same question.
I would say in healthcare, the consolidation of buying across the hospitals and standardization of the clinical protocols will help us to improve as a country. So standardized protocol mapped with the procedures, consolidated buying allocated to the Indian manufacturers through a common body, and that will help.
Thanks. Ajay ji.
I think we had a lot of schemes going around, like maybe PLI schemes are there, the ROTEP schemes were there. But overall in the industry, if you see it, I think industry needs, and especially for industry from where I come, I think we need certain benefits for the exports, especially to compete in the global market from the federal, to at least have these things rolling on so that at least we can compete in the global market. Second point is the infrastructure. I think the logistics cost, what I think it has been discussed a lot. Still we are struggling towards that. Adding to that is the statutory compliances. I think we far away documentation process still exists. I think a lot of integration happened in last a couple of years on the various schemes on the platform, or whether IceGate or any other policies. But I think that documentation process and statutory compliance has to come down at shortest, and with the especially to the people who are like AO certified there, and for those.
You know, Ajay ji, so if I have to sum up so far, the key recommendations which are coming across is that channelize more funding for the MSMEs. Second is that come up with more schemes which are helpful for MSMEs, because PLIs have been typically catering to the large industrial houses. So maybe coming up with more schemes which are incentivizing MSMEs, and thereafter when we look at overall from a compliance perspective, which is ease of doing business from an MSME standpoint, while GST has made it one nation, one tax, it has led to reducing the timeline in which the trucks are moving across from one part of the country to another, thanks to the great roads which have been laid down. But still, I think the compliance is onerous. So how we can address the MSME compliances, because all of these things put together can help in making a resilient supply chain for India and ensure that we are able to absorb the shocks which are coming because of the global trade tensions. Thank you everyone. Thank you for joining in, and thank you ASSOCHAM once again for inviting me, and thank you to all the panelists for sharing their views.